Welcome to Paulogia and another edition of Ham and Egg News, where we react to Ken Ham reacting to things.
Hi, and welcome to Answers News, and we have a lot to cover in this half hour. That's
Yeah,
for
we
sure.
do. We have quite a bit.
Yep.
We do.
Wow, your enthusiasm is really blowing me away, guys. Get excited, it's Answers News. It's not Eeyore Hour.
Not much of a house. Just right for not much of a donkey.
And actually, do you know what was really interesting about today?
Tell me.
It was cold.
How cold was it?
It was really cold.
Well, yeah.
It depends
it's
which.
normal.
I guess it depends which state you're from.
Well, it's normal.
It was
here.
minus 6 degrees centigrade.
It's minus 27 Celsius as I record this from my Canadian igloo bunker. I'm not complaining.
That's right.
Are you going to welcome our
Sounds
studio
worse.
audience?
I am, but you're talking.
Doesn't anyone want to be here today? They keep telling us the atheists are the sad ones.
We're going to talk about what's happening in the secular world here, and something that happened this week and happened today as well, and which relates to a sad attack on Christianity in this nation. The American Atheists today.
Did someone say American Atheists?
Ken Ham did. You seem familiar.
My name's Jim Helton. I'm the national field organizer for American Atheists. I live in between the Creation Museum and Ark Encounter and came up with a billboard campaign calling it Genocide and Incest Park. And we've been protesting it on their anniversary every year since the day it's opened.
Oh, right. I had clips of you on my Ark protest show from last July.
They are not leaving us alone. We must not leave them alone. And what we have done with this protest is bring that to everyone's attention that this is immoral, and it's not just about the Ark itself. It is a symbol of what's wrong with Kentucky.
And Seth and Aaron bragged about the great party you threw at your house.
The truth was, we were having a great time. In fact, when we were done, we all gathered over at Jim Helton's house, and we spent the rest of the day together.
There was a whole lot of people at Helton's house. I mean, a lot of people.
Since you're here, let's see what Ken has to say about you.
What they're doing is imposing they want to impose their atheism on the culture.
We're not trying to impose atheism on the culture. We're stopping Ken Ham from imposing his belief on students and everyone else. And I always say the worst thing you can do to a Christian is treat them equally. Taking away privilege is not discrimination.
The American Atheists today released a press release where they found out there are some park and recreation groups.
My name is Leslie Nope. I am the Deputy Director of the Parks and Recreation Department. And tonight we're going to be taking some of your questions. Hello? We're having a meeting in here.
Does anybody have any questions about permits?
In America, and they organise bus tours, particularly for senior citizens and others, and they go and tour various things, and people pay for the tour, but they just, organise the tours for them. And this has happened before, where they've organised tours to include the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter, and they usually include the Cincinnati Zoo, or Newport Aquarium, or the Freedom Center, or whatever in the area.
The Notting Hill bus tour starts at 2. The Love Actually bus tour starts at 2:30, and the Bridget Jones bus tour starts at 2:30 also. What do we do? Ron, your pick.
And the atheists then do the same thing to the park and recreations group as they do to the public schools, and then because of their bullying intimidation,
A lot of times they'll back down.
They back
sadly.
down, and they cancel the tours. Well, the American Atheists just released a press release, and they've written letters to park and recreations groups.
I am composing strongly worded letters about things I disapprove of, and I am using the internet to get addresses where I can send them.
This is one in Alabama that they wrote to, and threatening them that you are not allowed to have a bus tour that people pay for, but that includes the Ark Encounter of the Creation Museum. In other words, they're discriminating against a Christian facility.
So we're not discriminating against a Christian facility. There's a separation of religion and government, and Ken Ham's trying to have it both ways. He sent a letter to the state of Kentucky saying he's a for-profit business. He can reason have to pay taxes. So he's trying to get it both ways by claiming he's a for-profit business. So, it can just be a tour like the zoo. But at the same time, he's trying not to pay taxes and saying, hey, I'm a church. And when you're claiming you're a church, you cannot use government funds to promote his religious viewpoint and that the earth is 6,000 years old. And that's a problem. And that's the big issue there.
I'm Canadian, so my knowledge of this comes entirely from the old sitcom.
I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I'm doing it really, really well.
So just to confirm, Parks and Recs departments are government organizations, right?
Yes, they're government organizations, organizing a field trip and including the Creation Museum and Ark Encounter in part of that trip using government funds to promote religion. And that's what this is. And it's seen as often as an endorsement to religion. And, he's also when it comes to the schools, he's saying, he put out a release saying all schools can come for free.
Any public school that wants to bring their students to the Creation Museum and the Ark and wants to bring them as a official school trip, we will do it. We will do it right now, free of charge, to be a witness to those students.
Like, he's encouraging students in schools to break the law. Now, if individual children want to go there with their parents, that's fine, but they're getting the schools to do it. And he's saying, hey, you can come free. And then there are superintendents in Kentucky and other places that said, hey, we're not going to be intimidated. We're looking into trips. But if they do, they face some lawsuits because that's a clear violation of the separation of religion and government.
Yeah, they're saying, yeah, you can go to whatever. You can go do this, that, whatever, just not the Christian stuff.
And it's not just Christian stuff. What we are saying is we do have a secular government, despite what Ken Ham says, and government can't be promoting religion. And by taking them to the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter, you're promoting a particular religious belief. And if you've been to that place, it is clearly religious propaganda everywhere. It is not a museum whatsoever.
What if one of the attractions on the tour was one that promoted a religion other than Christianity?
It would be the same stance, meaning it's not just Christianity. Christianity is predominant in this country and abusing the separation of religion and government. But if Islam or any other religion was promoting the religion through government, American Atheists would stand up against that.
So if Parks and Rec groups were taking tours of the Scientology headquarters?
A similar thing, and they were doing this with government funds, that would be problematic, and we would have a problem. And we have done that actually with Scientology. There was a Scientology display, I forget what state it was, in a police department. They put up this huge, Scientology display, and we were like, hey, you can't do that. And they took it down shortly thereafter. So it's not just Christianity. We want a separation of religion and government. We're not picking on Christians.
And they claim because the Park and Recreation Group would have a bus tour that would include the Creation Museum and the Ark, that's endorsement of our position.
I won't publicly endorse a product unless I use it exclusively, and I really believe in it. My only official recommendations are U.S. Army-issued mustache trimmers.
And it's telling the people they got to believe it. That's a load of nonsense. It's not an endorsement. And in fact, it totally undermines even more the American Atheists' claim here, because when they include other facilities that are secular, as well as Christian facilities like the Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum, they're just taking them to a number of different facilities, and it just happens to include a couple of Christian facilities.
Just because you're adding other facilities like the zoo does not make it okay for this, and when the government is sending you, using its funds to send you a place, yes, it is seen as an endorsement. When you send school kids to this, like, hey, this is an educational facility. Hey, we go to this thing. And that's why it's considered an endorsement.
But you know what the American Atheists say in their actual letter? They say that they're a national non-profit organization elevating atheists and atheism in our nation's public and political discourse. In other words, they admit in the very letter they sent out that they're trying to promote atheism, and they're trying to promote that in the culture.
Religion,
and atheism is a religion.
So American Atheist is not a religion. Atheism is just a lack of belief in gods. And while American Atheist, is trying to normalize atheism, stopping the separation of religion and government is not us promoting atheism in the government. We want the government to be secular and neutral in all these standards. So they're very two different things on our objectives and what they're claiming.
Ken craftily points to the content of the letter as evidence that you admit that you're an atheist organization when the name of your organization is American Atheists.
Like we were hiding it somehow.
As part of Answers in Genesis' lackluster efforts, notice how they always use this emotive language, to draw visitors to its Ark Encounter theme park, the organization is engaged in a campaign of draft local government agencies as shills for its attractions. In other words, we are deliberately going to these government agencies and getting them to be our agents to get people to the Ark and the Creation Museum. What a load of nonsense.
It's interesting because, I look around, we're not sending all these letters to these places, but they are.
They are.
Yeah, and in fact, we have people here who specialize in helping bus tour groups come here, but they go to these conferences where the bus tour companies come, and we've never gone to the Parks and Recreations group.
Here's where he's being dishonest. One, we don't know if he's went to these places directly or not. That's why we asked for the information. But what he is claiming here is, hey, we didn't go to them directly. He's claiming we go to the bus tours. We have a full-time person that brings people here. And they go to the bus tours so that they know they target cities, parks, they target schools. So he is indirectly targeting them. And he openly admits in other letters that he's targeting government facilities because he came even on this show saying, hey, we want the parks to be able to come here. They got bullied. He said, hey, schools can come here. We're going to offer it free. So while he may or may not be in direct communication with the schools or the government, he's indirectly marketing to all the people that are talking to them to get them to come and then publicly announcing, hey, please come here. He's being very dishonest on this piece.
From the perspective of the strength of your case, does it ultimately even matter if Answers in Genesis is targeting directly or indirectly?
Whether Ken Ham's doing it or not doesn't necessarily put him at any legal liability. It's more of the government facility. Like, are they coordinating with him? Was this by accident? It's more on the government end that this matters. But he's trying to deny, like, hey, we're not targeting schools and things. Well, yes, they are, either directly or indirectly. It becomes more of a liability for the government or the county that actually is doing this. Like, did they just do it through a bus store and they had no idea? Or were they coordinating this knowing exactly what it was? That's the real question. But the liability is on the government's end, not Ken Ham's end.
Is that all you lawyers think about? Lawsuits and laws and legalese?
Yes. Part of the effort of Answers in Genesis includes distributing template language for agencies to use when organising trips to entice residents to Answers in Genesis facilities. We're deliberately going to these government agencies, according to the Atheists, and giving them language to entice them. Well, the interesting thing is it's very possible that someone came to one of the conferences where bus tour groups meet and has some of our marketing material or something and use some wording from there or whatever.
By using Answers in Genesis wording, that suggests some level of awareness or collusion?
Yeah, I mean, they're targeting the bus companies, whether they're talking the cities. They have the standard template. They're saying, hey, give out the places, whether they're going directly to them or using a third party to go to them. They have direct marketing materials to bring places to them. And it's very clear because when you look at all these cities, they're using the same language and they're using the same thing. It isn't just like one thing that copied and pasted from their website. Like, they're all using pretty much the same language in different states, different cities. This was clearly targeted, either directly or indirectly.
They demand from the Park and Recreations Group, and this is one of the letters, this one's to Tuscaloosa County Park and Recreation Authority in Alabama, all written communication between the Park and Recreation Group and each of the following individuals and entities.
So I need to go through every email that I've ever sent, ever. I need to know what they might use against me.
Ken Ham, they're going to get none because I've never written any of them. Answers in Genesis, Ark Encounter and Creation Museum, I don't think they'll get any because I don't think any of us have ever written to them. All written communication between them and Ken Ham, Answers in Genesis, AiG, Ark Encounter and Creation Museum after January 1. All internal communication between employees and Ken Ham. And, I write to employees in the Park and Recreations groups every day. Yeah.
I know you're being sarcastic, but maybe be careful of that quote mine there, Ken.
Here's where he's trying to play it off as him personally, but there's clearly an effort by Ark Encounter to entice these types of government facilities and schools to come. Again, whether they're doing it directly or indirectly, to be determined.
And to clarify, you're asking this of the Parks Department. You're not asking Answers in Genesis to hand anything over.
Correct. There's a Freedom of Information Act where if government employees are doing something like, hey, we want to know what communication. Was this a bus tour and you just were setting up this thing and you didn't know what these facilities were? Highly unlikely, but possible. Or were you communicating with the Ark to bring people here to proselytize? There's a whole level of what are they doing? But just to let you know how the law is on our side on this, when the Freedom from Religion sent a letter and American Atheists sent a letter, these schools and these cities just canceled the trips. Like, there's not even a court battle. There's not a fight. Their attorney looks at it. There's no bullying. We're just like, hey, you're breaking the law here, by the way. This is a bad idea. And they're like, yep, you're right. And they cancel it. These are getting canceled right away without any fight because their attorneys are advising them, hey, this will cost us money and we will lose. So we're not bullying. We're just reminding them of the law and making them aware that they're breaking it if they go to these things using government money.
Given all that, why do you think Ken is even bringing this up in front of his core audience?
He loves to blame atheists for everything. When his privilege is taken away, he doesn't say, hey, I have privilege. He uses the word, hey, I'm being discriminated against. And he loves to say he's being discriminated against and targeted, which just isn't true. Like, he sued the state of Kentucky for discriminating against his right to discriminate. Think about that for a minute. This is Ken Ham's number one go-to, is to blame atheists for discrimination against Christianity. And American Atheists are saying you need to be treated like any other religion and the government should be neutral. That's not discrimination by any means. If you've been to the Creation Museum, they have the atheist hallway where they blame drugs, war, teen pregnancy. Like, they blame everything just on atheists. It's absolutely ridiculous. This is his message.
I realize things have gotten a little out of control, and that's Ben's fault, and he's sorry.
We need to know if government employees are actively coordinating with the religious extremists at Answers in Genesis to use tax dollars to fund their fantastical version of history and their discrimination. And I thought, fantastical version?
Yeah, it is a fantastical version because they're claiming the earth is only 6,000 years old. They're claiming all these crazy things that are anti-science, and they're doing it while receiving government money, and they're doing it while maintaining their discriminatory hiring practices. They make the Ark Encounter a rainbow at night because they're taking back the rainbow from the gays. They have anti-LGBT literature in the Ark itself.
Are you trying to tell me the dragons weren't really dinosaurs?
I mean, if you go to their bookstore, they have that, dragons are real, unicorns are real. And they make the claim in there. There's a great picture with Aaron Ra, myself, and a few other people where they made the claim, and God killed everybody but one family. They built a theme park based on genocide and incest. Well, they have the right to build it. Who thought this was a good idea for a family fun day? I mean, seriously, the most immoral story you could think of, they're using to promote their religion and discrimination. Just bizarre.
Okay, these are the same people, and I'm not joking, okay? Scientific papers recently been released that said octopuses are so complex that aliens must have somehow put their eggs on things that then were sent to Earth so that we could have octopuses. What is more fantastical?
I have no idea what she's talking about. If somebody can, please explain.
Well, for that, we'd have to go back to an old Answers News from last May.
When I first saw the news headlines on this, I'm like, nuh-uh, no way. There's no way that there's been a scientific paper published that says octopuses came from outer space. But I was wrong, okay?
So you looked up the scientific article.
No joke. In Progress in Biophysics and Molecular Biology, which is a peer-reviewed scientific journal, published a paper basically saying that octopuses are aliens. Well, and when I first saw this, I'm like, no way. So I actually went and found the journal article because it's freely available online. And lo and behold, that is exactly what these scientists say.
Now, I spend a good deal of my time on this show complaining that Georgia and the panel merely read the pop news summary of science findings rather than going to the bottom of the article and clicking on the research itself and discussing that. So you'd have thought I've been pretty excited that Georgia finally went to the primary source on something. But not this time.
I'll read just one quote from the actual paper. It says, one plausible explanation in our view is that the new genes, okay, so this has to do with the Cambrian explosion, all of a sudden we've got octopus, are likely new extraterrestrial imports to Earth, most plausibly as an already coherent group of functioning genes within, say, cryopreserved and matrix-protected fertilized octopus eggs. That's a fancy way of saying octopus eggs were on these meteorites that came to Earth.
The trouble was, in this case, the news article they were referencing was about the scientists who are aghast by and very much disagree with the findings of the paper that George is reading. From the article, it will not come as a surprise to many to learn that these claims have been roundly mocked by the scientific community, who have branded the paper as ridiculous and unscientific.
Yeah, it's like, wow, who knew?
For example, the premise of the paper rests on octopus DNA being significantly and unexplainably different from all other known DNA. But the article points out a 2015 paper that published the sequencing of octopus DNA, which found no significant differences that were even slightly unusual or unexplained, let alone needing a panspermia model to explain. The story wasn't the meteor octopus that makes for funny headlines. The story was that scientists were questioning how this hypothesis got published in the first place. Of course, the Answers News crew doesn't acknowledge that most scientists reject this hypothesis as fringe and unnecessary. They present it as generally accepted, so they can hold it up for audience ridicule not only that day, but quite regularly since, pulling it out for a chuckle, like today. I mean, one of the features of science is self-correction. It's not like it's the creation scientists who are the ones pointing out the flaws in this or any research. It was other professional scientists in the field calling out their own. But unfortunately, this has given AiG the gift of something they can laugh at to feed their narrative.
They'd rather believe that aliens, which we have absolutely no evidence for, sent life to Earth.
That's
really?
Right.
I mean, it just shows you. They don't want to believe God is real. They want to continue to deny him over and over and over again.
So that's the story of the space octopus.
I do learn something new every time I listen to them, so.
At least this let them stop saying that Richard Dawkins thinks that life came from space.
Well, how do you compete with, the banana theory? It's just hard to debunk that, isn't it?
True. Speaking of banana theory, they're having Ray Comfort come to their Easter conference.
Yeah, you know why they're doing their conference? They're doing it at the same time because the American Atheist Conference is coming to Cincinnati, and we actually invited them to hey, let's have a conversation. And so they're doing a whole conference on how to talk to atheists, and we're like, hey, we're right here. You don't have to speculate on how to talk to them. We're right down the street. Just come talk to us or we'll come to you. And they've ignored all requests for that.
Well, they don't make any money by attending your conference.
But they didn't invite us. Like we even said, we'll come to you. And they still have not. They're going to teach the people how to talk to atheists without ever talking to an atheist or ever hearing our viewpoint because they're sheltering them from us, apparently.
I did not know that.
Because I'm pretty sure we would come. If we were invited, I am pretty sure we would come.
When you read there, we need to know if government employees are coordinating someone at Answers in Genesis to use tax dollars to fund, tax dollars. See, they claim we use tax dollars to build the Ark, which is another lie.
Here's where Ken Ham's being very deceptive. Ken Ham is claiming they didn't receive any tax dollars to build the Ark. That's not the claim. Ken Ham is getting up to $18 million from the state in reimbursement. So he's getting it in arrears, in incentives from the state. 2% of all employees' paychecks in the area go to pay back their $65 million junk bond loan. 75% of the real estate tax doesn't go to the government. It goes to pay back the $65 million junk bond loan. They received over $100,000 in cash. They received over 100 acres for $1. They are getting government money left and right. They didn't get it to build the Ark, but they're getting it as reimbursements to pay for the Ark. So if you notice, he uses his language like we're making the claim that they're using the money to build the Ark, and that was not our claim. They're using the money to pay back the Ark's loans is what they're actually doing, and they're getting it in arrears. So he's being very deceptive on here on purpose in his language that he uses.
Are you familiar with the county's safety surcharge tax that goes with each Ark Encounter ticket sold?
Oh, yeah. What most people are unaware is I was very involved in that. Indirectly, the city reached out to me through third parties. And what happened is they were doing a 50-cent fee, and Ken Ham sold it to himself for $10 to say, we're a church, we don't have to pay taxes. The city was drafting language that he would have to pay the 50-cent fee. And through that, they were like, when he switched to a nonprofit, the city's like, now what do we do? Because the city was on the verge of bankruptcy. So I was reached out to indirectly, not directly by the city, but indirectly from the city to several people. And we brought it to our attorneys and we gave them language. We fixed their language so that no matter if they were a profit or nonprofit, they were going to have to pay this 50-cent fee that they were fighting. And as soon as we provided that language and Ken Ham and the Ark realized that they were stuck, and because they sold themselves for $10, they should have lost their $18 million tax incentive because they would have to reapply. They sold it back to themselves back again for $10 and then agreed to pay the fee. So we were very involved in that process behind the scenes, ensuring that they had to pay that fee, which then made it very easy to track attendance numbers that Ken Ham's been lying about.
Well, first of all, thank you for all that work to provide a modicum of justice for the county. And second, in that case, last week on my show, I pitched a theory that I'd like to run past you. So starting with this Easter conference, Ken Ham is promoting a new pricing model to get into his attractions.
We're going to have what's called a multi-day ticket. It's a combo ticket to the Ark and the Creation Museum, and you can go back and forth as much as you want, and also it includes parking. And we have a family one, and a family is defined as 3 or more, so it doesn't matter how many children you have, they have to be in that one family, though.
So it's my hypothesis that he's going to take these 7-day passes times 3+ people and count that as just one ticket, and thereby avoiding paying 20 instances of the county safety surcharge tax. Does that ring true to you? Do you know if he could potentially get away with that kind of accounting?
I don't know what he's going to do there, but it wouldn't surprise me if he only claimed one ticket to pay 50-cent tax fee and then claimed he had 20 attendees off that ticket. Because that's what he's claiming on the 50-cent fee. He's claiming he's getting 1 million people, but his numbers just don't add up to that. So he's talking about all the people that get in free or passes, things of that nature. So I have no evidence of that, but it would not surprise me at this point on how Ken Ham manipulates his numbers.
That's what I've been saying too. I don't have any evidence, but it's just a prediction that I hope I'm wrong about for the county's sake.
And it's interesting. Here's some of the wording they use in their document. Fringe, religious extremists, fantastical, and they say we discriminate.
It's because they do. Like if you're LGBT, you can't get a job there. If you're an atheist, you can't get a job there. Catholics, Jewish people can't get a job there. If you're single and are having sex, you can't work there. If you think the earth is not 6,000 years old, you can't work there. They're absolutely discriminating.
We don't discriminate. We allow everybody to come.
They'll take anybody's money. They just won't allow anybody to work there. That's the difference. Yeah, they'll take anybody's money to come preach the word of Jesus to them, but they are absolutely discriminating in their hiring practices, and they openly admit it.
You know, it's good for all young people to realize there's an incredible attack on Christianity in this nation right now, and the atheists want nothing more than to get you to not believe in God, to reject Christianity, and they want you to be converted to the religion of atheism.
There's so much here. Christianity isn't under attack. Again, I sound like a broken record because he keeps saying this. We're just taking away Christian privilege. We want a true separation of religion and government. I would stand here and fight for anybody's right to believe whatever they want religiously, even if that goes against what I believe. But the line in the sand's drawn when the government tries to impose its belief on the people. And that's what Ken Ham's doing. We just want a secular government that's neutral on religion. We're not attacking Christianity. We're not using the government to attack Christianity. We just want the government to remain neutral. And often, as we see in the current legislature, and especially depending on what state you live in, like in Kentucky, it is not neutral, and they're clearly endorsing Christianity. And, American Atheists, among some other great organizations, are fighting to separate the religion government and take away Christian privilege. But that's not an attack on Christianity. And atheism is not a religion. It's just a lack of belief in gods.
They say they want a waiver of all fees for the collection of this information.
I noticed that.
And they said, we're a non-profit organization. We want a waiver of fees. So they want a benefit from the government. And they're a non-profit organization. They're a 501c3, so they get a benefit from the government. And so they're using their benefit from the government as a tax-deductible organization to try to impose atheism on the culture and discriminate against Christianity. Think about that.
Think about that. Just on the Ark Encounter sense of getting a benefit from the government, their entrance gate is a for-profit company. So when you go to the Ark, you pay their for-profit company for the ticket. They take you to a bus ride down a road to the boat, which is a nonprofit, which can discriminate it. He's eating his cake and having it too. He's taking both sides of this, which is utterly ridiculous that he would make a claim that a nonprofit's trying to benefit from the government when he has clearly done this time and time again.
If they were consistent with saying, hey, we don't want religions to be taught in their public schools and that sort of thing, then they should be sending these same letters to natural history museums, to the Smithsonian, to all these different places.
Well, as acting manager of the Parks Department, I declare that everything you are saying is stupid. I love you.
I think that's all the complaining about American Atheists they're going to do today. Any last thoughts you can share with us about combating Ken and his Ark?
I would say come join us in Kentucky the weekend of July 6th, where we will be protesting the Ark Encounter on their grand opening anniversary. We do this every year. We've had amazing guests. Dan Barker from FRF's been there in the past. Aaron Ross, Seth Andrews, Hemant Mehta, the Secular Coalition for America. The who's who of atheism has been there. It's going to be another big event this year. We encourage everybody to come out and protest the Ark Encounter and stand up for the separation of religion and government and end discrimination.
And what's the best way that individuals can help you in your efforts?
Go to atheist.org. You can look up my contact information, reach out to me. We are standing up for the separation of religion and government and trying to normalize atheism. And one of the big pushes we're doing is working with affiliates all across the country. I live in between the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter, so it is a competition and I'm winning. We understand that there's other states, other cities that have their own problems of separation of religion and government. And we want to help people fight for equal rights when religion's used as an excuse to discriminate. And we're providing toolkits. We're providing helping with op-eds in the papers. We're helping write testimony if they want to testify at the State House or speak to city council or go after their school boards for comprehensive sex ed, which religion's teaching this abstinence only. We provide support like you've never seen before to the local grassroots activists and to affiliates. So please reach out to me. Would love you to give you the resources of signs to protest, anything you want to do to normalize atheism and the separation of religion and government. My job's to say yes way more than it is to say no and help fellow atheist activists around the country.
Well, that sounds like an amazing job. Thanks for sharing your insights with us today, Jim.
All right. Keep up good work, and I appreciate what you do. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this video and found the information useful, why not subscribe to Paulogia so you can be notified when we have new science videos, apologist videos, or topical news videos like this one. Huge thank you as always to my patrons, whose financial and moral supports literally make this channel possible. If you value what I do at Paulogia and can join them for as little as $1 a month, please check the links in the description. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time, later.